Quorum, take your seat. There's Dennis is the quorum.
Morning, Dennis.
Greetings. How are you?
Fine. Yourself? Well, welcome everybody. Rob informs me that we do indeed have a quorum in the house. So it is the witching hour, so we'll go ahead and get started and call the monthly meeting of the Board of Directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments to order. And as I said, we have a quorum, and we'd like to start with introductions here around the table, and I'll ask Commissioner Heisey here to start us off.
Dennis Heisey, El Paso County Commissioner.
Tyler Stevens, Mayor Pro Tem of Greenmount Falls.
Rob McDonald, PPACG.
Neil Levy, City of Woodland Park.
And baseball coach.
Rafael Dominguez, Mayor of Monument, not a baseball coach.
Gerald Glenn, El Paso County Commissioner.
Tony Master, Vice Commander at Shreveport Air Force Base.
Brad McDonald, Vice Commander of the 10th Air Base Wing at the Air Force Academy. Good morning.
Rich Birchfield, representing Colonel Doug Schuss, our new wing commander out of Pearson Air Force Base.
Ron Chisholm, the Deputy Garrison Commander for Carson.
Sharon Thompson, Fountain City Council.
Karen Rowe, Region 2 CDOT Director.
Bill Murray, City of Colorado Springs.
Norm Steen, Teller County Commissioner.
And I'm Mark Snyder, Mayor of Manitou Springs, and the Chair this year of the Council of Governments. Welcome, everyone. We have our next item is item 2, agenda approval. My understanding is that item 5G, the Arkansas AFCURE met yesterday and don't have a report for us today, so I think we'll dispense with that item. Any other changes to the agenda? Bob, anybody proposing? Do we usually vote to approve the agenda? Well, then a motion would be in order.
Move to approval. Change. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Thank you. Item 3, well, this is always a fun time for us. We have a service award to confer today under Section 3A. We have a 15-year award to give today, and every organization has those people who really make the organization hum and take care of all the matters that you don't see pretty much behind the scenes. And today, I think it's our pleasure to recognize one of those folks who has done a wonderful job for us here. Rob, did you have a few comments you'd like to say?
I will limit them. Barb Laricos, who's in the back, and she'll make her way up. Sometimes you forget all the things she does until she takes vacation. And she's also one of the folks that, one of the small things, she takes care of these plaques that we give out. But I thought she shouldn't do her own plaque. So we changed it up a little bit, and we did a certificate of sorts. So we'll do that in a minute. But in the 15 years, I think Barb has done everything from support me and this board. She's gotten away from that, and she smiles when she says that somehow. But I think all the building things she does as well. So building manager, human resource director, whack-a-mole for anything that gets out of line with the building. So really a Barb of all trades. So she's been amazing to get everything done, and I really appreciate everything for 15 years.
I can say personally, when I really need to get something done or contact folks down here, Barb's the first person I think of when I really need to get some attention on something. So you've done a great job for us, and 15 more years, maybe?
Oh,
I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts that they wish to share with the group. Otherwise, I think it's time to present the certificate. And does this come with it, or no?
Nope.
Okay.
She already received her cash reward for that.
Certificate and a free folder.
A free folder.
She has plenty.
Congratulations. You're doing a great job for us. Why don't you stand here in the middle?
Yes, we have no
Camera?
Well, we're assuming such. But
You got one? There it is. The camera's here.
Come on up, Andy. Why? You can stay up here with us.
You could do photo bombing.
You're a heartbeat away from being chair, so. All right, you want to hold that? I'll hold it with you.
There it is. We're ahead of schedule. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Okay, well, moving right along, item 3B are topics not on the current agenda. This is an opportunity for somebody from the public to speak to the board about something that's not on today's agenda. I see a hand up there. Mr. Vituli, would you like to come up and speak to the board?
Good morning, Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit. I just wanted to briefly pass something out to you.
One page.
We're going to be holding public hearings for our fall 2015 service changes. This identifies the changes that we're looking at. These will be funded with $1.2 million in additional PPRTA sales tax revenue. As you can see, they're mostly service improvements and some system performance improvements. So we're having public meetings on Thursday, tomorrow, and Friday at the Citadel Mall Imagination Celebration, and at City Hall tomorrow evening from 5:30 to 7. And we'll be accepting comments until July 17th. So we hope to improve service more and get some comments from you all.
Well, that is good news. It's always nice to see that you guys are expanding the services that you can provide. I know we have a lot of supporters for public transit in this community, and I hope that they are as gratified as I am to hear that things are moving slowly, but moving. So,
Right. In the right direction.
great. Well, thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak on public comment? Well, I see Craig has worked his way up to the podium, and I just found out this morning that apparently we continue to make a little name for ourselves on a national level. So I thought you would...
If you'll find on your desk announcement for the 2015 Transportation Planning Excellence Awards. In 2008, our 2008 plan was the runner-up for best MPO plan in the country. So this is for our 2012 plan. We were the best MPO plan in the country, recognized by FHWA and FTA. So
Well, that's quite an accomplishment for us.
we're pretty happy about it.
Absolutely. So I understand this is still a little bit under the radar.
It
But
is. They sent, you can read it. It's still embargoed through the end of the week. So we can't put it on Facebook or anything, but they said we could announce it here. So that'd be no problem.
Well, that's great. Congratulations, Craig. I know you've probably more responsible than Okay, well, item 4 is the consent items. We usually take these as a whole unless somebody wishes to pull one of these A, B, or C for special considerations. Anybody wish to do so today?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay, well, we are already to item 5, reports, and if memory serves, we're going to have a distinguished visitor from CDOT today. Director Bott, is he still scheduled to join us today?
He is still scheduled. He is running a little bit late, so if we could just adjust the schedule around for when he arrives, that would be.
Well, why don't we hold off on the whole CDOT monthly update then, and when he
Okay.
arrives, we'll just take it all in one fell swoop. Will that
Okay.
work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'll lead us to 5B, Executive Director's Report.
A different executive director. CDOT one will be here shortly. A couple things to inform the board on. One is continue to work with the Office of Economic Adjustment. We're real close on the scope of services for the joint land use study. I'll be sending out to my military friends hopefully by the end of the week for their review to make sure we got all the spectrums covered of joint land use study. They're pretty happy with the way it's shaping up. So we'll continue with that. Probably be advertising for staff positions in the near future, and then hopefully announce next month that we have the funds secure. But they're looking at a couple of things in the proposal, and so it's a iterative back and forth process, as we did with Fort Carson. We know it well, so I think the ball's in their court right now. And I'll report probably next month of where we are with that. Also, on your agenda is TIP Amendment 1. A lot of time going through a lot of numbers and changes of that. As the board knows, the TIP is many documents, many parts, but a huge table of 20 or so pages. So the full TIP is usually on our website, and then TIP amendments, as you have today, are a portion of that. So we just usually show you the changes, not the whole thing. But someday we may show you the whole thing every month. Also, we're talking to State Representative Carver. She's part of the TLRC, Transportation Legislation Review Committee. Shaylin and CDOT were presenting to that yesterday. I don't know if Karen, you were there, but they're talking some it's in your packet as well under the CDOT item. A lot of interesting topics the legislative year-round committee is talking about. So we're tracking that. Representative Carver wanted to have us speak as an MPO on that group to say, how's the interaction with CDOT working? How do we partnership? How do we get projects done together? We didn't make the agenda this time, but we, I think, hope to in September, their next meeting. So I'll let the board, and maybe some of you will be asked to come join us for that presentation. But it's still a work in progress. Last one, Connect for Health in our insurance program. The Connect for Health contract we got for renewal wasn't what we were expecting. So we have parted company with them. It was a friendly departure on each side. They were going to try to figure out how to do the outreach navigation service that we've done for about a year and a half now. The staff we had are now not doing that anymore. They may show up as other staff positions that the board approved last month, but we don't know that for sure yet. But Connect for Health will endeavor to continue. I think in essence they were looking for us to do the same amount of work for a fifth of the money. We chose not to engage in that endeavor. And because it's a reimbursement, we didn't want to be out the money and then they disagree of our efforts, maybe not matching up to their efforts. So we, again, chose not to renew that contract, and so they will figure it out some other way.
Any thoughts on what direction they'll be going with this, or?
No, we don't know. I think on our website, the series part, we did put the number to their statewide number. So the Connect for Health Colorado, you can go to their website, you can call them and do the similar services. As far as we know, they have not hired anyone in Teller or El Paso County to do that service. We don't know if they're looking for folks or just send everyone to the state exchange and go into the state website.
You know, it's my recollection that our efforts were pretty much a standard, leading effort in the state, so I'm a little surprised that they...
We were too. They held us up in their initial audits of legislative committees and others to say, here's how it gets done. And we were under budget. Yeah. We asked them to roll over the money to continue for another few months. They said, no, we need a new contract. There's new dynamics, there's new terms, there's new requirements. And so they said no to the extension and no to a new contract. And actually, we said no to the new contract. They offered one, but like I said, it was a bad deal.
Yeah.
And so we didn't want to be at risk for $50,000, $100,000. Not a good message back to the board that, yeah, we're kind of out money. Sorry about that. But it just wasn't good terms. And we think they'll figure it out, but they have a lot of other things at the state level they need to talk about for audit committee and other things. We're okay with letting that transpire as it will.
How many staff were working?
At the height, we had 6. But where we are now, we were down to 2. And so they're no longer working for that function, obviously. And so we have 3 or 4 new positions coming available, and they'll be applying for those. So we'll see how that matches up.
Thank you. Any questions for Rob on his report? Anybody? Thank you, Rob.
Take care. other executive director who just showed up.
Oh, good. We'll give him a chance to get a cup of coffee. Should we continue on, you think? Sure. We'll go ahead and call the item 5C, Transportation Advisory Committee. Morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board. Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County, but today representing the TAC as chair. We had 2 meetings since your last board meeting, and I'll go over those. We were presented for recommendation the 2040 Moving Forward Regional Transportation Plan. We did note at our meeting that there were some chapters that were incomplete and missing information, but in an effort to try and get that out, we did recommend a release of that. We did receive communication, the whole TAC did. Thank you, Rachel, after the meeting, letting us know that at the CAC that was determined to be delayed another couple months. So I expect that TAC will be seeing that again here in the next couple months and then be providing you a new recommendation. So we did, the next item was the 2016 to 2019 TIP Amendment Number 1. We discussed this at our meeting, and we were still unable to provide a recommendation. So as previously discussed, we had tabled that item and until we established a special meeting on June 25th. We did review the non-motorized transportation system plan and have you provided you a unanimous recommendation of approval on that plan. And I just want to thank staff for doing such a great job on that. You'll be seeing that today as well. But there's been a lot of work that has gone into that, and we appreciate everything that has occurred on that. The 2017 to 2022 TIP control totals and schedule. We did review this and provided a recommendation. I would note that the numbers in your board packet are different than the recommendation we made. I think that there's still some errors in those, and I know that Craig will be addressing that with you today. So, and then we did discuss the Unified Work Program, and I know that will be discussed with you today, and we'll see a draft at our July meeting for discussion and recommendation. And then, as you had at your last meeting, we had the Strategic Highway Research Project 2 overview by Mr. Muzzy. And then, just to report on our special meeting, just want to give you kind of a sense of how much work and effort has gone into the TIP. And this is just our special meeting. TAC members spent 5 hours with CDOT staff and also PPACG staff to identify some of the issues that remained in the TIP and to try and all come to a final revision so that we could present that to you today. We did recommend approval with some contingencies. One, that CDOT would verify their projects, staff would verify pool totals, and that the total program amounts match the distribution and to check all formulas. I know that what was printed in your board packet, that all the member governments reviewed that. We had also asked for additional spreadsheet, the entire spreadsheet, so that we could make sure that all those had been addressed. I know that as of yesterday, we had 4 member entities provide comments to staff, identifying still some remaining issues with projects and pool totals. And at this time, I hope that those will be addressed today when Craig addresses you on those. And there's also, I know, all the member governments who provided comments are out in the audience today, so if we'll have the opportunity to address that as well. And I just want to thank Wendy Pettit and Michael Snow with CDOT. They've done a lot of work working with PPACG and appreciate everything that they've done. So,
Well, thank you. A 5-hour meeting, huh?
yeah. And unfortunately, and thanks to Brian, because he finished out the meeting for me, I had another obligation to go to. So my vice chair, Brian, finished out the meeting, but it was a lengthy meeting with no breaks, and so
Thank you for that.
It's a lot of
effort,
work.
Certainly, yes. And And we'll keep working on this. It's been a challenge, I think, to get everything reconciled and on the same page. So.
And thanks to PPACG staff, I know we still have some work to do. So I'm hopeful that what gets presented today will be able to get fully reconciled.
Good. Thank you again, Phil. Any questions for Jennifer and the TAC? Thank you. Well, I think we can circle back now to item 5A, which is our CDOT monthly update, and we have CDOT Executive Director Shailene Bott with us today. Thank you for coming down. Little traffic on I-25 today?
If you know somebody I can call about that, I appreciate that.
I think we all share that sentiment with you on.
It's terrible. I mean, it is truly terrible. I guess I shouldn't say that, but it is.
Well, I think we're a victim of our own success. Colorado is
Yeah.
a very attractive place. We've got a lot of people migrating into the state, and that just kind of leads us into, I think, what the future of transportation is going to hold. So, Karen, I didn't know what your pleasure was here, whether you wanted to formally introduce Mr. Bott or jump right into our monthly update. But
I'll look to him.
Yeah.
okay.
I'm good. I can. And should I stand up here? Or should I?
It's up. It'd probably be better if you stand up there.
I'm sorry. I apologize for everybody my back to here. Yeah, my name is Shailene Bott. I am the executive director. I guess I don't know at what point you go from being the new executive director to being just the executive director. So I'm 6 months on the job now, and I feel like I've been down in the Springs a lot lately. We've had some groundbreakings. We've got some projects undergoing. I saw the Cimarron project. Everybody slamming on the brakes when they see the blue and yellow lights on the radar sign. So that's good, slowing down the construction zone, and they're moving dirt down there. We need a lot more investment. It just amazes me. You're right. There is a lot of people. Yesterday, I presented up at the Capitol, and we're talking about in the 1991 there were 3.3 million people in Colorado, and we were spending about $125 per person per capita on transportation. We've had all this growth, but the funding has stayed the same, and now we're up to 5.8 million or something like that, and it's actually cut in half because of the inflationary aspects of, like just think about what you were paying for rent or a mortgage or a car in 1992. Right? Think about what you were earning in 1992. I was making, I think, $4 an hour, $3.75 an hour at a part-time job. And then imagine if you had to pay your current bills in 2015, with what you were making in 1992. And that's what we're doing. And I've heard from some people that the solution to some of our transportation problems is to stop bringing people to Colorado. As somebody who has lived here for 6 months, I say, let's keep Colorado for Coloradans now. Unfortunately, there's no way to shut off that flow. And somebody told me, I think they said that the Denver metro area is going to add the population of Oklahoma City in the next 20 years. I see the growth projections for Colorado Springs and some of these other areas and up north, and it's mind-boggling. And I shudder to think of what the CDOT executive director, unless we make some changes, is going to be facing when going to public meetings in 10 years when there's a lot of gridlock. So as I cast a very grim outlook for the future, I'm actually going to switch to a more hopeful outlook now. But I think part of the attraction is it's an awesome state, right? So this is my third governor I've worked for now, and one Republican, two very centrist Democrats, sometimes in these jobs you get job offers, and I've learned in my marriage to not just go home and tell my wife, hey, I took a job in Colorado today. But when I went home and told her that this was an opportunity, she's like, I've always wanted to live in Colorado. She had come out here when she was a high school teacher and had just fallen in love with Colorado, and so I was like, okay, well let's pursue it. And then I met with Governor Hickenlooper, and I always say that if you for professional success, if you have a great place to live and work, and you have a great boss, that's pretty much what you need, right? That's the foundation for professional success or professional happiness. I'm working on that with Karen right now. The jury may be still up for whether she has a great boss or not yet, but she clearly has a great place to live, and it's beautiful. Whether it's in the Denver area, my wife and I actually came down here for a few days I don't know how many of the, it's a primarily male crowd up here, so I'm very careful in how I talk about this, but my wife is expecting, she's due at the end of August. So they've got this racket now called a baby moon, right? So, and a push present. So you have to I guess the baby used to be the push present. Now you have to buy like a gift, and you have to take them on this trip. So we came down to the Springs. I see I'm treading on thin ice. Like, What are you going to say next, there, big boy? So my wife and I actually came down for a few days to the Springs, and we went up to Garden of the Gods. We went up to Helen Hunt Falls, which I was relieved to learn was not named for the actress. I was like, Helen Hunt has a falls named after her? I was like, that's quick work. But I went up there. It was just beautiful. So we just, of course people are coming here. It's an amazing place to live. But, I was with the governor in Denver at somebody's apartment downtown a few weeks ago, and he was sort of pointing out for my wife and I, when I came here in 1980, bless you. When I came here in 1980, that building wasn't there, and this building wasn't there, and this wasn't there. So, and I've heard people talk about in the 1980s, Denver was kind of, not a backwater. I don't know. Just it wasn't the place that it is today, right? So something happened, and the population of 3.3, something happened to bring a lot of people to Denver, a lot of people to Colorado, and you can look through history and see that happening, right? Like places get that thing, that certain buzz, that place where people want to be there, whether it's the economy changes or you get an influx of jobs or technology or whatever, but that can also go away, right? So something happened to make Denver a great place, but I'll tell you, Colorado a great place. But I'll tell you, the other day we had bought this laptop and we had to go back to Best Buy, and we were talking to the guy, and we had to go 3 nights in a row to get this thing fixed. And the guy was like, "Yeah, I was born in I think Castle Rock, and I grew up here." And I was like, "And you hear a lot of people, I'm a lot of native Coloradans, a lot of pride in being from here." And I was like, "Oh, so you're planning on staying?" He's like, "No, we're moving to Phoenix next year." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because I can't." He goes, "My wife hates the traffic, and I can't find a place to live. We're living with my parents, and we can't afford a place to live." And that to me is a big warning sign, right? That is a big warning sign that very thing that is pulling people here and creating this great quality of life, or that, and you look at the economic development side. I do a lot of economic development work. I've done it in all 3 states and at the federal level when I was there. Companies are looking for that thing, right? They want a place where their employees would love to work, right, and love to live, and that is a economic benefit that I think that Colorado has benefited from. But I think that if I landed at DIA right now, and I was like, let's go find a place to put our factory. And this is happening right now. And then they get on I-70, and they get on I-25, and they realize that, yeah, those mountains look pretty good, but you can't get there from here. Or they realize that their people are going to be sitting in these. I mean, I drove past I want to say a 3.5-mile backup on I-25 this morning. And look, it's an incident, but I hear this from folks all over the place. Why do you shut I-25 all the time? Why do you shut I-70? Well, in many parts of the state, these are 2-lane facilities, and any kind of an incident on a 2-lane facility is going to shut your facility. And so there's a needed investment that needs to get done. And I know that here in this area, you all, I was going around the state. I did a 3-day, 1,100-mile tour around the state, and I was talking about because some folks up in Boulder were talking about, yeah, we've passed a tax increase. And I would talk about that. I said, that's pretty progressive. And some of the folks up north were like, yeah, well, Boulder never met a tax increase they didn't like, right? And so I get that there is different areas. This area may be a little less Bouldery in terms of the politics, right? If I can say that. Please don't quote that. But this is also an area that has seen fit to pass revenue yourself, right? And it's not because you were like, hey, let's be more like Boulder, right? It's because it's an economic imperative. It's a quality of life issue. It's incredibly, to me, it's incredibly visionary and progressive. And to those very same folks who say, because a lot of folks are making this out to be a Republican-Democrat issue. right? I've worked for a Republican governor. Secretary LaHood was a former Republican congressman when he was U.S. DOT secretary, who I've worked for. And I think myself, I am like a lot of people in this country, probably more socially moderate or liberal, and I'm pretty fiscally conservative, right? But to me, it's always made sense to invest in transportation, not just self-serving. It's just that's what societies do that want to advance. And you look around the country at states that are doing this. Utah, and I'll come back to Utah in a few minutes. Utah, 17% of their sales tax goes to their transportation system, and they have increased their gas tax twice, right? So Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, these are not very sort of flaming liberal states, right? I don't know that you get much more red than those states, and they have all increased their gas tax. And I'm telling you, they're doing it because they're coming after the jobs that we all want. My former governor used to say I think he said there's 1 billion or 2 billion jobs in the world and 4 billion people competing for them. We're not just competing with the surrounding states of Utah and Nebraska. We're competing with other countries now. And everybody wants these jobs. Everybody wants this infrastructure. I used to hear from people that when I used to come to America in the 1970s and I'd fly here from Europe or I'd fly here from, the developing world, and they would just say, wow, what a country. You land at these gleaming airports and, you look at the infrastructure that they have. And I'll tell you now, I've traveled. And I know many of you have probably traveled. And when you land at an airport in the United States, DIA is probably an outlier, although it's 20 years old. And I was talking to the management, starting to show some of its age. But if you land at some of our East Coast airports, if you've flown in from, the Middle East, if you've flown in from India, if you've flown in from China, if you've flown in from Europe, you're landing there thinking, you know what? That airport I just came from is a lot nicer than this one, right? And then you get out on our roads and you see concrete spalling off of some of our bridges, and you think, that rail that I took to get to the airport did not have the congestion that was out here. So I wish that more places were, if I can use the word progressive, like this area, and understood. And that is going to be a big deal for us as we move forward. How do we, as a state, get our head around this idea that it's not a Republican bridge or a Democratic highway. It is a necessary investment that we need to make for a quality of life, because we're taking something that we inherited, which is the interstate system, and we are running it into the ground. We're not improving it. We're just not doing it. So now I'm going to switch to the positives. And I apologize, I'll get down off my soapbox here a little bit. But it's nice.
Can we just pause for a moment and enjoy the fact that you called us progressive?
Yeah. Well, but is that an enjoyable moment?
For yourself.
Sorry, that was a personal comment. I apologize.
Progressively conservative. That's what I like. So let me just be very brief, and I want to leave some time for Q&A. So. I think I'm very focused on one thing. I want CDOT to be the best DOT in the country for all of our customers. And I say that, and everybody kind of says that we want to be the best. I think we can be the best. And there are things that we do really well. If you look at some of the data that we have, our pavements in the state, we're 32nd in the country in terms of pavement rankings. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. We're slipping on our bridges. We were 11th. We've dropped to 15th. In terms of pavement condition. That's not because more of our bridges are falling into disrepair. Once we fix the I-70 viaduct in Denver, actually all of our bad bridges will be done, but lots of other states are moving more quickly to repair their bridges. That's why we're dropping there. Travel time reliability is terrible in this state, particularly along the Front Range. And travel time reliability is determined by if you go somewhere, say at 3 o'clock in the morning, it takes you 20 minutes. What's the deviation between that when you go during rush hour, and a 20-minute trip that is at off-peak can take up to an hour and a half, and people can't stand that, right? That's what drives people absolutely nuts. So we're saying let's be the best DOT in the country. That's sort of our peak. We have 3 summits, our people. I think that if you I was talking about Southwest Airlines. Who's flown Southwest, right? So it's when you fly Southwest. Whether it's the person on the phone or the person at the gate or the person on the flight, they're just really happy, right? And they provide great service. And I think they do that because they get treated properly, right? And it's just their culture. And so our first summit is our people, right? I want our people to love to work with CDOT, and that starts with me, right? You have to you have to be a good leader, and then you have to hire good leaders, and you have to have great leaders. I think Karen is a great leader. So your people, if you treat your people right, then I think they'll treat your customers right. Right. The second is a healthy multimodal system. I talked about the economic impacts of that, the safety aspects. But these projects, we've got to do them on time and on budget. It's got to be a multimodal system. We're starting bus staying. And then third is technology. That's our big summit. I think that technology is going to transform the way that we drive in the next few years. I think a lot of people think this is like a George Jetson 2050. It's here. It's now. There are cars out there now that will not crash. You cannot make them crash. I mean, I guess you. I don't know. I actually don't know. There are some of these higher-end models now. I actually test drove a Subaru when we were coming out here because my wife said I had to get rid of my 2002 Standard with a tape deck. And I thought, well, let's drive a Subaru because it's part of the state vehicle here. And it had these two eyes on up around the
eyesight.
Yeah, the eyesight. And the guy was like, it won't let you crash into a vehicle in front of you. And I was like, can I try that? He's like, well, we don't usually do that on test drives. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to. And I could not. It would not let me drive into a stopped object. And that sort of stuff, it's kind of like airbags, seat belts, all these sorts of things. They're a feature, and then they become standard pretty quickly. And I think you're going to see a rapid transformation of how we drive in the next few years. One thing government is not good at is being very nimble and very quick to adapt to these things. So I want to make Colorado the leading state in the country around adopting connected vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure, autonomous vehicle technologies. And it's not just an urban area issue. We lose about 500 people a year on our roads in Colorado. And I won't get too much back on my soapbox, but 1/3 of those are due to seatbelts, and that's just dumb. It is just dumb, and I cannot believe that we do not have a primary seatbelt law in this state. Just think about that. All of those people, over 100 people, dying because they're not belted up in 2015, that just doesn't make any sense. But the majority of your fatalities are going to be in rural areas. So people always want guardrail, right? We need more guardrail. Well, what if we had virtual guardrail, right? So instead of having to go out and install expensive barriers that have to be replaced when they're hit, what if there's virtual guardrail that was telling the car, this is a dangerous intersection, or there's been a lot of crashes here, so the car slows down before you even have a chance to be a distracted driver or a drunk driver or an unbelted driver, right? Or if on I-25 we only have 2 lanes or 3 lanes in each direction, but instead of having to have 12-foot lanes or 11-foot lanes, if it's a computer that's driving the vehicles, maybe we only need 8-foot lanes, and we can just go out and restripe 2 extra lanes because now vehicles stay in their lane. They don't weave side to side because we can just get more toothpaste through that tube. So I think that's here. It's coming, and we're pretty excited about it. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to be the executive director of CDOT. I think it's going to be an amazing few years, and I will stop now and take any questions that you may have. Or you may have. I'm not sure how that works. Or I can just leave.
I can start us off.
Sure.
You mentioned future funding options, and I'm really curious to see what's being contemplated up there at the state level and what we might expect.
So there's 2 challenges with funding, right? So we have federal funding, and there's an $11 billion gap right now in the Highway Trust Fund. So your federal gas tax goes to the Highway Trust Fund. There's an $11 billion gap that Congress has 4 weeks to fill, and it's turning into this political football. And now there's actually even Republicans who are saying, you know what, no more short-term extensions. We've been operating under short-term extensions, and it's just out of control. I mean, you don't do multi-year, multi-billion-dollar programs and then have uncertainty around funding. It's a dumb way to run a business, right? But we keep doing it to ourselves. That runs out. That's a big deal. We get $500 million a year from the feds. 2/3 of our construction dollars in this state come from the Federal Highway Administration. Utah, it's only 38%. That gap is represented by their state and local share being bigger, right? Because they're making investments. On our side, the reason that Utah and Nebraska and Idaho and Wyoming are able to do that because they don't have to go to the voters, right? They don't have to go to a statewide ballot. And I'll tell you what I hear from a lot of folks is, God, it frustrates the heck out of me. I hear, that's the right thing to do, but it's a tough vote. Well, sometimes you have to take a tough vote, and you all have done that down here. I'm sure it wasn't terribly popular when you went out and talked about it, but people, I just think you tell people, here's what we're going to do, and then you deliver, and they believe it. And I think they've passed it twice now, right? So you have credibility, right? To me, I think that I hear from people, well, we did a poll and only 52% of people support a gas tax increase, and that's soft support, and then that goes away once they start attacking it. Well, if people are waiting for 70% of people in Colorado to stand up and say, yes, raise my gas tax, it's not going to happen. It's going to take leadership. It's going to go out and saying, here's what we're going to do with your money. Give us the money, and this is what we'll deliver for you on time and on budget. But it's a big deal. But I talked to the Chamber of Commerce. I've talked to the motor carriers. I've talked to some of the mayors in the metro area. I've talked to folks up in Greeley and Longmont who don't like the idea that we're not going to widen I-25 till 2070. The governor this last year had this idea of the hospital provider fee. Is that a way to, and to me what I don't understand and why I don't understand why it's so difficult, you have Republican legislators up in northern Colorado who are like, we want to widen I-25 right now, right? So they want us to go out and bond $3.5 billion and do that. Unfortunately, that blows a hole in our asset management budget. You've got a governor who says, hey, let's find a way to fix this fee so that we can direct more money into transportation. So I feel like you've got to pay for, you've got revenue, you've got Democrats and Republicans who want to do it. So I feel like there's some hope, but there's always the naysayers who say, oh, it's not the right time. Well, it's never going to be the right time. Sometimes you just got to go out and do it. So I don't know. We'll see more later this summer. I think some of the contractors are going to do some polling, and we'll see where we are in terms of a ballot initiative, something that can get done in the legislature later this year. But I'm open to, if you have suggestions or if you have thoughts. I mean, you guys have done it clearly here with the regional transportation authority. I'd hate for that to be where we end up, but if that's what ends up happening, then Denver will do theirs and other folks will do theirs, and it'll be the haves and the have-nots. But that's what ends up happening.
Well, I know we get some pretty regular inquiries from other communities in Colorado about the success of our RTA, and I think that's certainly a movement I'm aware of around. But I've also been reading about up in Denver. I think you mentioned the viaduct,
yep.
And it looks like a pretty new model for transportation funding. It looks like maybe CDOT's partnering with Denver out of their stormwater fund to get a major $173 million project done.
So it's a $1.2 billion dollar. If it was 173, sold. I'll take two.
Yeah.
I want to be clear because this is always a challenge, right? When I was in when I did my tour around the state, one of our folks was like, "Oh, you moved here from Delaware, right? What do you got? Like 3 snowplows out there?" It's like, "No, sir, we have 5." Right? And we just talked to each other through these tin cans with ropes, right? But we actually had all the roads there. But Delaware, I've been told repeatedly, would fit inside one of the larger counties in eastern Colorado. Well, when I was in Kentucky, we had 120 counties, right? So 120 counties, 3 counties, 64 is just right. But one of the things that was common in Kentucky, there was a big $4 billion project to replace the bridges over the Ohio River into Indiana. And it's a major north-south NAFTA trade route, similar to I-25, where you go from Canada to Mexico. And everybody who wasn't in Jefferson County was like, forget that project. That's going to suck every dollar out of the state, and we don't want it, right? But it's a system. And it's the last bridge that we have that's a terrible if you've been on this thing or if you go under this thing, it's 3 lanes in each direction, no shoulder, so anytime there's an incident, you block a lane. Concrete is spalling off of it. We actually had some post-tensioning cables that they were installed as a repair in 1997 that actually corroded and just came off the other day, right? And I was like, I'm no bridge engineer, but that seems like a bad thing, right? And so it's $1.2 billion. It's a public-private partnership where we're bringing in the private sector to assume the risk, right? Because anytime you're taking down a 50-year-old structure, you're digging down 40 feet, there's groundwater issues, there's contamination issues. So the private sector is assuming the risk on the construction side, which is good. That's what you want in a public-private partnership. Or there's a revenue risk. Denver and CDOT, they're actually ponying up about $90 million of it. Some of that comes through their drainage areas, but it is a pretty good model, and I think it's a model for the future whereby the state can't, just like the federal government can't solve all our problems, the state can't solve the problems. It's going to be the state partnering with locals and the feds to help make this happen.
Well, as Karen has pointed out more than once to me, that our success with the RTA has actually gotten us more attention, more funding from the state level to get projects done. So I think that is a real model that other communities will be looking at. But I was looking for a little more specificity, maybe. And you mentioned a few of the funding options with the governor's hospital fees, Transbond 2 I've heard about.
Yep.
So what process do you envision over these next 6 months to get us to the point where we can, or maybe even in a shorter time frame, to look at something substantial that we could increase transportation funding?
So I have worked for 3 governors and a president, and I've learned that specificity is the enemy of job security. So before I get too far, if I can use a call, get too far out over my skis on this one, I am painting broad options in terms of what is available. Because remember, it's not just, and I say this in defense of a governor, to me, transportation is the #1 issue. And for a lot of people, it's a big deal. But if you're a governor, you have health care, right? You have education. You have all the things that all the elected officials have to deal with, plus my issues. So while I think the governor thinks that this is a big deal, there's a lot of things that people want to take to statewide ballot initiatives. And so all of these things take time to percolate. I will say that one of the challenges that we faced last year was during the legislative session. You know, and I was fairly new to Colorado at the time, but it seemed like the shootout at the OK Corral, right? Like one side would pass a bill only to have it shot down in glory on the other side, right? And it was like a body count in terms of how many bills were being passed and then killed. In that environment, right, it's hard to find common ground. The Trans 2 came up very late. Look, I like the idea of Trans 2. I think bonding is when you have a pay for, right? When you have a pay for is something that you use, right? When you go to buy a house, you don't pay. Most people don't pay cash for a house, right? It's an asset that you invest in, and I'm okay with bonding. But the problem with Trans 2 is that the pay for in this case is our federal revenue, which is already spoken for asset management. And I don't think that it makes sense if you're going to go out and be responsible for a system that you say, okay, in order to go out, or just think about your house, right? If you wanted to go out and build an addition on your house, if it meant that to pay for that addition, you were not going to repair your roof and you weren't going to reseal your driveway and you weren't going to, do all the necessary maintenance and you would see the degradation, you wouldn't do it. So for 20 years, it blows a $250 million hole in our asset management budget. So for me to go out and widen I-25 and widen I-70 and do 50 and all the other projects that everybody wants to get done, I got to find $250 million of paving, of bridge work, of signals, of all of this stuff, geohazards, right, that I don't fix, and they don't just stay there, they deteriorate. And so to me, the right way to do this is, okay, you want $3.5 billion of bonding, that's $250 million a year, here are all the projects that we'll build with that, now give me a pay for. And if it's a gas tax, great. If it's a sales tax, great. If it's a Tabor fix with the hospital provider fee, great. But I cannot, in good conscience, go out and just say, we're going to borrow $3.5 billion and build a bunch of new projects. But I think that, like I said, I think there's common ground there. I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't be that difficult. The governor wants to do something. Legislators want to do something. Let's do something.
Well put. Any questions, please, Mayor?
Shailen, I wanted to publicly thank you as a BERTA board member myself, and on behalf of the BERTA board, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to meet with us last week to discuss BERTA debt repayment. And the relevance to this body is, if you recall, we reallocated some funding last month from TIP to go towards debt repayment, BERTA debt repayment. So again, publicly, thank you very much for taking the time to meet and discuss that. And Karen, thank you very much for coordinating the meeting.
And I've driven through that interchange like 4 times now, so now I know exactly what we're talking about.
Bob,
Yeah. Shailen, good to see you again. I think the board has talked about over the years, and we like specifics too, but I think what the board has talked about is those cleared corridors. You understand NEPA, you got to go through that multi-year process. But once you get there, then this board would like to have CDOT look at our 3 cleared corridors, I-25, 21, which is Powers Boulevard, and 24 west and east. NEPA's done. We're ready to get, as we see the I-70 East Viaduct, what are the funding concepts? Because that's very detailed as far as the commission and CDOT staff has looked at. How do you fund this $1.2 billion? We hope it comes in for that. And so all those partnerships.
What's coming in? It's coming in for that.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all.
That's all. And so as you heard, this board with our Transportation Authority, they've contributed about $85 million to state highway projects because we got to have them. We contribute some of our federal money that this board directs to those corridors, like I-25, Cimarron, Fillmore, all the CDOT big projects. So I guess the request is to have the staff, your staff, look at what are the funding options. And we know there's probably 10 or 12 funding options. We like to identify those too, so we're not like the North Front Range, hey, see you in 2070.
Yeah.
But like CDOT has done a great job identifying the possible funding sources for the $1.2 billion. We'd like to do it. We have about $1.5 billion on the three corridors that's ready to go. We're not going to get $1.2 billion to fix all our corridors, but we want to start identifying what widening project, what multimodal corridor we improve, what interchange do we build. So we do it in bite-sized chunks, 50 million here, 100 million there. And so that's, I think, something the board would be interested in getting the staff to look at. How do we fund our NEPA cleared corridors, which are state highways?
Yeah, no. So to me, the two big challenges in getting major projects delivered is NEPA and funding, and it's amazing to me that there's a lot of cleared, there's a lot of rods that we have that we're ready to go. We just don't have the money, right? And I want to be very clear, and I know a lot of you appreciate this, but this is for some who may not get this. I don't want to create the impression that CDOT is sitting on wads and wads of cash. In Denver, you get $1 billion too, and you get this, and we go around the state and dole out this money. There are very specific colors of money that we're allowed. So the $500 million we get from the feds, there are certain roads it can go on, certain projects it can go to. The $1.2 billion that we're projecting for this $90 million coming from Denver, a big chunk of that is coming out of bridge enterprise money, which can only be spent on deficient bridges. And so it's been money that we've been saving up and hoarding. It's not money that I could just take and say, you know what, I don't want to spend $850 million on I-70 East. Let's go widen I-25. There are constraints around how we use that money. But I'm happy to sit down, and Karen and we can sit down and talk about, all right, what is realistic? And then more importantly, how do we leverage the fact that you guys have done what I consider to be a progressive thing, which is tax yourselves for transportation projects. I want to see if there's ways we can reward that to then incentivize other communities to say, hey, you know what? There's a benefit to doing this.
Anybody else have any questions for the director?
Appreciate you coming down.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you.
Are you coming up for the Community Advisory Committee report?
Rack. She's jumping ahead of Bob.
I'm jumping out of line.
Bob's behind you. I think he has.
Well, you know what? Even before we get there, I wanted to see if Karen had anything for her monthly update to the board.
I think I wanted to remind you, busting starts Monday, July 13th. So CDOT's going into the transit business. And so, again, the stops will be at Nevada Tejon, and that's where our ribbon cutting will be. I think I'm riding on the first bus up to Denver. And then at Woodman Park and Ride, which we're starting to get shelters in there. It's getting restriped. I think you should see some work, and hopefully we'll have that all done by the time the ribbon cutting or first voyage starts. And then at Monument. So those are our 3 park and ride locations for the bus staying, and then it'll stop at Colorado Boulevard and then downtown Denver. So we're pretty excited. It has Wi-Fi, it has outlets in there and a bathroom in there, and buses made just for this effort. So pretty exciting transit project that will get going with our faster registration fees transit funds there. And then we are starting our second State Highway 94. I know that's not technically in the Pikes Peak area, but out east we'll have that going, and we have our other surface treatment projects in town and a Powers project that's under construction. So, pretty exciting projects going on, 3 surface treatment, and then we have our 3 ramp projects going. As you know, with Cimarron, we won't have any construction starting really that impacts traffic until next April. But as you can see, Fillmore's moving along nicely. It has that beautiful arch that even surprises me. People comment on it. So, and that's what I have for this month, unless you had anything in particular.
Please. What's our 94? What's happening out there?
It's from where the other project ended, the other surface treatment project. So this last one went from Colorado Springs to Ellicott, I think, and this one's from Ellicott to 71.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah.
Ellicott to the county line.
To the county line. So yeah, it's just resurfacing out in that area. But that was one of the ones we advanced. So with the cash management, we have a surface treatment plan that's fiscal year 16, 17, 18, 19. And some of our fiscal year 16 projects were falling behind because we needed right of way and other things. And so that was a fiscal year 7, or that was a 16 project, or 15 fell behind. So we advanced it. It was a pretty easy project to get done. So we moved it up a year to the summer. And so that's part of the cash management that's pretty exciting. And what I plan to do is next month come and show you what are the projects that are scheduled for the next 4 years in terms of surface treatment and faster and RPP. I know you have your tip, and you can look through the many pages to see what projects are there, but I'll have some maps that'll show you where the projects are and right now what's being planned and what year we're anticipating them going to construction.
You say for next month?
Yeah,
Okay,
for next month
great.
I'll do that because I know I want to get it in your packet and everything, so I'll submit it with the time frames that we can get it in the packet in time.
Wow.
So,
We'll look forward to that. 'Cause
okay, any other questions? The only other thing, Doug Lawler is now retired as our North Program Engineer, and I held the first round of interviews yesterday, and so I hope to get the position filled by the beginning of August, so we should have our new North Program Engineer person on board at the next meeting, too.
Please.
Oh, and that just reminded me, we obviously we have a vacancy in the commission. It's a governor's appointment. They've asked me to meet with some of the folks, and I've had some really great conversations. I think that this area has got some really great folks who are eligible. The downside is that only one of them can be picked. So I've had some good conversations, and probably end of this month is the time frame.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time to meet with all those wonderful people.
They are very nice.
Okay. And we understand you're a busy man, so you're welcome to stay. We're going to get a riveting CAC report here in a moment. But we understand if you have other obligations.
Yes.
So thank you very much for coming down.
It has to allow time to get through the traffic.
Yeah. Give yourself a little extra time wherever you're going. So, Bob, come on up.
Thank you. Bob Baker, CAC. I wonder if you folks have heard the expression, the planet boulder.
A planet
You haven't?
boulder.
Well, it is an expression here in Colorado Springs about the planet boulder and the differences that might exist. Yeah.
We actually call Boulder the larger Manitou to the north. So,
Is that a positive?
we think so. But
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Jen Nellinger, Al Creeley, and Jim Moore for filling in during my extended absence. I've been away for some 10 weeks at Loma Linda University Medical Center receiving proton radiation therapy for prostate cancer. And I would like all the men to know if they have need to consult anybody, be your own advocate, do your research, and I am a very informed and knowledgeable person concerning the treatment. 45 treatments, 5 days a week. So I played golf immediately after almost all of those treatments. Also like to thank Rachel and Jacqueline for the support they have given the CAC process. At our meeting, our last meeting on June 24th, we reviewed and recommended the Regional Non-Motorized Transportation Plan. Kudos to Transportation Planner Emily Lindsay and the associated committee. We reviewed and recommended the draft 2017-2022 Transportation Improvement Program Development Document. The CAC approves of the funding levels as presented by staff. The fiscal year 2016 to 2019 TIP Amendment Number 1, the CAC, as you saw in your packet, withheld a recommendation. I'd like to just take the rest of my time at the podium to add some comments to that situation. The information we received prior to our June 24th meeting was scant in its analysis and depth. Staff presented what information they had, which arrived the day prior. Notably, the packet you received for this board meeting is complete by comparison to that which the CAC received. The TAC also, as one can see from the packet, had concerns on the issue, causing them to conduct a special meeting post their regular meeting seeking further information. CAC members voiced frustration with lack of sufficient lead time, lack of staff analysis, concern for the CAC becoming a rubber stamp entity, and that a lack of recommendation might ultimately lead to funding delay for Powers Boulevard at a time the military presence needs that improvement. It is not my or the CAC's intent to impugn the work of staff. We have substantial respect for their work. The crush of the process is the cause of our consternation, and the resulting lack of thoughtful critique by otherwise very competent groups of staff and committees. Another example of the point that I'm making is that there was a change in the action on the draft moving forward 2040 Regional Transportation Plan from a review and recommend action to an information-only item. I'm saying this was a good thing. The timing was not right for us to make a decision based on the information that we had to absorb and the time frame that was at that time there. I think we need to look at processes and how demanding they are on both staff and committees. Something has to be worked upon to coordinate that whole process better and take advantage of the assets we have in our committees and on our staff. Questions?
You raised some really good points, and we share your frustration here. I mean, I think Rob could give you a chapter and verse, but we got, a public comment from CDOT, which basically contained, an incredible amount of changes in information. And I know they really wanted us as a board to just adopt those, and we refused to do so, of course. So we passed a tip, and then we went through the amendment process. But even with that, I know it's like drinking from two fire hoses, trying to digest all that information.
Yeah. So we can't let ourselves. We want to do competent work, and there are pressures that are not allowing us, I think, to do that competent work.
Rob?
Yeah, comment, and very good comments, Bob. And I know the committee and the TAC share some of the frustration. For the citizen committee, what we're recommending, we're going to do a workshop with you to walk through every line item of the TIP tables so you understand the funding source, the project, and where it came from. Now, the board knows all the projects come from the local governments and CDOT. They don't come from citizens unless it goes through that local government process. So we're going to have a workshop to walk you through all those. The other recommendation we're having is for the local governments and for CDOT to join the CAC So most of the TIP amendments come from CDOT, 3 pages of TIP amendment. There wasn't a CDOT staff member at the CAC meeting. And so we as staff try to interpret that, but sometimes when we have 2 days to interpret that, it's hard to get a full description of somebody else's document that they submit. So we're going to recommend that CDOT join the CAC when they have a TIP amendment, and they can explain their TIP amendment better than staff can. Similar with the local governments, if they have a TIP amendment, it's complicated, it gets into the weeds. We'd rather have the county, the city, the towns talk about this is the TIP amendment and why we're moving money from here to there, we're adding money, we have to delay the project, whatever it is. And usually PPACG staff will have a recommendation based on the same facts to the committees, but certainly the board, at the board level, because you all have told us time and time again, we want the staff independent review of the information. And so we're going to do that for the next CAC meeting. So the CAC members, there are a lot of new ones too, so they can understand the as far into the weeds they want to go with the TIP tables, and just kind of walk through it of where are the changes, what are those triggers that cause a change, whether the bid came in higher, the project got more complex, we're adding money, we're deleting money, whatever that is. We want the local governments to explain it to the CAC members so that they're comfortable, as well as staff is comfortable, that we have all information. So we'll start that for your next meeting.
You know, the new members we've added to the CAC over the last year are very experienced community people with great knowledge about our community in a lot of different areas. They're fast learners, and I think we have a blend of senior people on the CAC that have been through all sorts of iterations of plans, and they too are very competent, but many of them are also the source of the frustration that I tried to coalesce here. So I did talk with Rachel, and I am aware of that workshop, and I think that would be good. I also think that the steady presence of a CDOT person at our meeting when there is a CDOT issue is a very important thing.
We agree. Okay. Is that workshop going to be at the regular meeting or a special meeting?
I don't think we have that date nailed down yet. I'm looking to Rachel. I don't think we have a date, but at their next meeting, we're planning to have.
For attendance, it would probably be best to get it before the meeting,
right,
and have people show up early.
Well, let us know what you want for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we'll make sure that we have that provided for you.
Those 5-hour meetings would not be a very good thing.
No.
Thank you.
There was no break.
Joanne, come on up.
I apologize for jumping the gun. I'm Joanne Ruth with the Regional Advisory Council. This is an excellent month for us because we are getting out. The Regional Advisory Committee will be meeting in Jefferson, Colorado for the July meeting, which we are always looking forward to. There's also the State Fair. The county fair, I'm sorry. The county fair is in Calhoun, so we're looking forward to being there. For our meeting this month, we had provider presentations from Mobile Dental and Ken Matthews from the Caregiver Support Group. Both of these were extraordinarily informative. The Caregiver Support Group is an excellent opportunity for our community to really do what we all have to do, and that is eventually caregiving. We are looking toward the end of August when Guy Dutra-Silvera's retirement occurs. Unfortunately, we kind of think about, well, none of us will ever retire, but I know he's looking forward to retirement, and so do all of us. But in the meantime, we have to look at his replacement, although we can't do that, but we can certainly look forward to our next leader. Those interviews are starting this week, and we will be looking forward to continuing those and then selecting our new executive director. Thank Rob for the work that you and the staff have been doing. It's difficult getting everybody put together. The opportunities for our Regional Advisory Committee abound. We are pleased that we're finished with our budget opportunities to look at the budget for the moment, and we're looking forward to working with our new director. Are there questions?
How long do your meetings last?
When we're doing the annual budget meetings, and we're doing all of that processing, they don't last 5 hours, but we may have three-hour meetings often. So thank you.
Thank you for your report and all of committee's work.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the Mobility Coordinating Committee. Hello.
Good morning, Jennifer Wilson. There was not a memo for MCC in your packet, so I'd like to make a brief but riveting review of our meeting. To start, first, progress on our MOU with our joint scheduling and call center, Peak Ride. The MOU is going to all the boards of the human services providers, and our baseline evaluation data is due July 28th, so we're progressing very nicely. And in our new yellow book, you will see an ad for Peak Ride. And our senior ambassador program, we had a nice update. There is an upcoming event Tuesday, July 14th, meeting here at PPACG at 10 o'clock. We have a nice group of seniors, and more are welcome. We're taking Route 3 to Old Colorado City for a social event, and anyone is welcome to join. We also discussed the Park County Medicaid update. They were awarded a feasibility study grant to address the shortages of NEMT, and as a result, they'll be able to use Northwest COG's NEMT brokerage system. And also the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, visited Park County and interviewed essentially to discuss the NEMT, so we're pleased about that. We also, of course, are talking about the upcoming Bustang preview event at the Independence Center tomorrow, July 9th at 3 o'clock. It's specifically designed for seniors and passengers with disabilities. There'll be a great Bustang presentation, a Q&A session, and also a tour of the bus. Any questions or any other highlights required on the meeting?
Anybody? Doesn't appear so.
It was great to hear from our director. It's nice to hear that we're progressive.
Thank you. And we have already decided we won't get a report from the Arkansas Fountain Coalition for Urban River Evaluation, so we can move on to our action items. And item 6A is fiscal year 2016 through 19 TIP Amendment Number 1.
Craig's got that one.
Good morning again. Craig Casper, Regional Transportation Director. As we've heard from the CAC and TAC, we've had some exciting times with the TIP. The good news is, per a conversation with Wendy this morning, our TIP is fiscally constrained, Powers is set to go, and so the TIP amendment won't impact that project. The bad news, again, as we heard, it's not perfect, but good news again. Because we're not adding money, it's just changing which year projects are funded in. Everything can be done administratively, so that we adopt this TIP amendment, and then we can take like Paso County as Arnold Bridge. Right now it's split funded in 2016 and 2019, which doesn't make any sense. We've got the funds available in 2016 to move it over, so we'll do that. So that'll be an administrative amendment. So we've got a handful, maybe 10 of these that we know we need to do, but they can all be done administratively. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about these issues that we've been having. And one of the things that's come out is our format of our TIP is not communicating effectively. It was originally, it's been this format since before I got here. It was originally done because projects it's organized by funding category. Projects used to get funded in one category. Now we have Franken funding, where you got a little bit here and a little bit there. So projects are spread 2, 3, 4, 5 different categories. And so we've been talking about maybe tweaking the format. For the 2013 to 2018 TIP, the previous TIP, we had talked about doing an e-TIP online database. We started that process, didn't finish it. We got wrapped up in other things. I think that's something that we can going forward. We can really get the whole database up there so everybody can see the information how they want to see it. Have it organized. Show me by project. show me it by funding, show me it by tip amendment, however it is, show me by location. I think that will help a lot with communicating and understanding. But I can go through all the amendments if you'd like, individual. But that's, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of them. Like I said, we know it's not perfect, but we also know where there's issues. So we can do those all administratively because we're not adding federal money. So.
You started out by speaking about fiscally constrained.
Constrained, yes. We're not spending more money than we have. So that's the good news. It's fiscally constrained. The Powers Project, and I can bring up the Powers Project here. Where's my mouse? I can't find it. There it is. I need to change that. And that's the key one. The Powers is at the end of the month or early next month is set to go out for bid. And actually what we have money in 2018. One of the things we'd like to do is slide that back to 2019 because with cash management, CDOT can spend it now if it's in 2018 or 19. But that would free up money in 2018 that would make some of our other puts and takes work better with our other projects. So it'll stay, it's funded with cash management. We can spend it all now for Powers, but we'll probably slide that back to 2019, bring some other projects to use of that 2018 funding. So.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that was one of my confusions. I was looking through the table. I'm going, we have Powers now.
Yes.
But it's 2016 money, and you're talking about rolling it back to 2018. I'm a little confused about how that process is working.
Under federal rules, this FHWA looks at the 4-year tip as the 4-year tip, and you can spend any money in that. DOTs can spend any money in that 4 years in whatever year they want to. So they could theoretically spend all 4 years worth of money in 2016 and then just hang out for 3 years. That's not realistic. MPOs, we're working with CDOT to get MPOs to be able to do the same thing, where we'll be able to, spend money in the 4-year period. That puts a pretty big burden on CDOT's Office of OFMB, Office of Finance Management and Budget. But it's their burden, so I'm still pushing for it. So with cash management, they can spend that 4-year period now. So as long as we show it by 2019, it's good for them.
But doesn't that then really lock you into something if you're spending 2019 money in 2015?
Yep. And once you start doing that, then you're in 2018 they'll be spending 2021 money. And so, but they're getting a lot of projects out on the road now, and money now is worth more than money later, so they're able to do a few more projects. So.
Oh, I get that. I'm just a little confused looking at the chart and looking at the schedules.
And I think that's part of our issue too. And it'll be the good news for us, understanding-wise. We only show 4 years. Our next tip will show 6 years, but only 4 years we'll actually be able to span. So that's going to get to that communicating effectively with our format. Something we're going to have to figure out.
Okay, well, then my leading questions come to the nut here. How are you accounting for the advanced money that you're spending against a 4 or 6 year tip? We have,
especially in the absence of a federal bill, which expires the end of this month, we have the forecast. OFMB and Federal Highway have said, okay, this is how much money you can realistically expect or is reasonably available in each of these years. And as long as we don't spend more than that, we're good. Bad things would happen if the new bill reduces federal gas tax or something. Then we're in problem. But the projections, CDOT is actually pretty conservative. So we generally have a bit more money in each year than resource allocation shows, and you'll actually see that in a later item, an exact demonstration of that. So, but we just make sure we're not spending more than the estimate for that year to be fiscally constrained.
It is challenging, isn't it?
There's a lot of numbers.
I really appreciate you, Craig. I mean, I've been hanging around for about 10 years here, and I get to about 75, 80% understanding, and then it all gets cloudy. And your ability to go to the 100% is pretty remarkable.
There are times that I vapor lock. So where's that?
And Andy brings up a great point. We're taking money from the future to get projects done now, and you don't want to be in an elected official role and just keep pushing that problem down the road, make it somebody else's problem when you're gone.
Yeah, we call those people Congress.
But, at the same time, we're all about getting things done and getting projects out the door and getting necessary work done. So, we don't make the rules, but we do our best to work with the rules and prosper under them. And you do a great job in helping us with that.
We're trying, so.
The TAC had put a couple of, I'm sorry, Rob, please, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. First on the cash management, CDOT's allowed to do that, which is great. Our version, and Craig talked about it, but I wanted to reemphasize it for the board, is we do tip amendments to move the money around, and the administrative allowable tip amendment, we do that to make sure the bottom line is done, that your local projects or a CDOT project, when they look at the tip, the STIP, they see all the money, whether you're collecting it from 3 or 4 years or 5 or 6 funding categories, that it's all in there. So when you approved your TIP amendment policy, this is one of those tools we have to move the money back and forth. So any project, whether it's a sidewalk project, a local government project, you can then contract with CDOT and get the project out. And so, as Craig said, working within all those rules, sometimes you have to find creative ways until hopefully everyone has the same rule book of the feds will let MPOs and this board move money between years, not just the DOTs across the country.
So the TAC had made 2 conditions on their recommendation for approval. The second one being PPACG staff will verify pool totals, ensure the total program amounts match the program distribution, and check all of the formulas.
Yes.
Have those 3 things been
They
accomplished?
have, and some of the formulas, there may be a couple that are still broken, but they're broken to our detriment, so we're still fiscally constrained. We may have not spent money, and I'll show you again with my next item, that there's more money coming in. Another issue that causes confusion is when we do money, we show the federal amount of money. When we get this printout from CDOT, it's federal and local, so we have to multiply everything by 0.8279 because the other 0.1721 is local contribution, is the minimum local contribution. And so we've found a couple cases where that got broken, and we're either showing federal and local or so. But we've caught, I think, most of them.
Karen?
I just want to comment on the 4-year STIP and spending the cash in there. So it's something that we call cash management, but we're just trying to do a better job of, for example, like for Cimarron, we have a lot of funds budgeted in Cimarron, but we know we're not going to spend them all this year. So, we have things in place to make sure we're not overspending our money, but we're providing a lot of flexibility in that 4-year, knowing that right now it's actually fiscal year 16. So as of July 1st, 2015 is our fiscal year 16. So when you see 2016 up there, that's now. And so, again, with Cimarron, we know we're not going to spend it for another 3 years. So, we're trying to make sure that we're just spending as much money as we have in each year, and we just provide flexibility. That's a little bit what I talk about with the surface treatment projects. We have a certain amount budgeted for fiscal year 16. However, we're not spending all that money in 16, so we're advancing some from 17 into 16 and just making sure we're really spending all the money that we're getting. That's kind of the goal. And there's a lot of things behind the scenes that we're doing with our systems and our projections of when we're spending the money on the different construction projects to make sure we don't get in trouble.
Karen, the other addition that our TAC put on was that CDOT will verify their projects.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I'm wondering if you do and if that has been accomplished.
I will have to work with my staff, but they have been verifying our projects, yes. I do know that step has been taken. I've been working with Wendy, and she's been showing me, here's what we have. And like I said, I know I have spreadsheets, and she's been using those spreadsheets and verifying with what Craig has been coming up with to verify the projects. I will get a little bit more involved and see if that the resident engineers, too, from the North program can help me verify that information with us not having a North program engineer. But also that's where I will present next time on here's the projects. You know what I mean? Here's where they're actually located, and here's a projected estimate for their construction. But I also want to make sure that I do get the latest schedule of CAC meetings and TAC meetings and try and make sure we have somebody there from CDOT since Doug Lawler's not here anymore. So be patient, a little bit patient with us. But Wendy and Michael Snow have been working with Craig on this, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Norm?
Just one of the lessons learned from the ramp projects is we saw a spike in labor costs. You know, we had about a 12 to 15% bump on projects statewide. I think probably the part, basically because we had so many projects in such a short period of time, and maybe that was a cause. When you verify a project on the tip, the level of confidence that you're right, does that improve as you get close-in projects? It kind of deteriorates the farther out you go. So I'm wondering if the cash management actually improved your ability to accurately estimate projects, or what factor that has been in your verifying projects measure.
I don't know if I have an answer for that yet. We'll find out as we move forward.
So high level confidence or low level? You're pretty confident about the level of the accuracy of your estimates.
I would say it's still an estimate looking out in the future, because a lot of these projects, again, as you scope them, as you get into it, you find out, is there more right of way than you thought, and how much does that right of way cost? And that's a lot of the stuff we don't have up front. What we're trying to do now, knowing that we have this 4-year plan for projects, is to start going out and scoping them early. So even if they're not planned to be designed for another 3 years, maybe scoping it now and identifying the high-risk issues or the cost items and seeing if they're relatively accurate for that project, and maybe adjusting those estimates as we move along.
Yeah.
But right now, we just got that 4-year plan in place. So we're in the process of getting our staff together to look at those projects in more detail to get that better estimate.
And one of our strategies is to remove pools and put it in specific projects. And a little bit of, there's some risk in that you may need pools in order to cover overages and so on. So especially the farther out you go, the more maybe a need for a pool. But our strategy is to not use pools as much. Is it?
Yeah, but I think we do it. We have a pool, an RPP pool here, and so pools are used sometimes for a whole bunch of smaller projects, and then when it's a regionally significant corridor, then we use that corridor as a STIP number. So it just depends on where the project is, but it does provide flexibility. And the nice thing, for the most part, this is mainly RPP or faster safety. And with RPP in particular, that's all stays within the region. So if there is a project that goes to construction and all those funds aren't spent, then that money comes back. So there's a little bit already inherent in, yeah, you're projecting this is how much the projects cost, but any money that's not spent can go back into the pool again. Mm-hmm. So, we're getting going on this 4-year plan and the cash management. And so right now I would say it's a little bit more cloudy or murky, but we are working towards getting it a little bit more refined, so we get better estimates and can keep projects moving. But none of them are really, really big projects, so I don't, again, that plus or minus 10 or 20% is I think we're in the ballpark there. And we were pretty conservative based on what the construction costs have been coming back for many of the projects.
Okay. Jennifer, please.
Jennifer Irvin, TAC Chair. Just to clarify what the TAC meant in regards to CDOT verify their projects. CDOT had previously provided projects that were not included in the TIP that still needed to be included in the TIP, and so that was the intent of the TAC, is to make sure that those are not included. Those are not included in the TIP that you're voting in today. And we realize that nobody wants to hold powers up, so I guess we'll just have to try again to get it right.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any question? Oh, Kathleen? Good to see you this morning. How are you?
Thank you. Kathleen Krager, City Traffic Engineer. I did attend the full TAC meeting from beginning to end, so that gives me the right to say something about it. I just want to stress that it's very crucial that we pass this tip today for a number of projects and keeping them on track and that type of thing. But that I think the local jurisdictions are concerned with the tip table, and I want to give you a couple of examples of why this is really crucial to us and why we need a tip that is easier to read and that we can keep track of on a regular basis. In many ways, the tip is like your checkbook account, and it's like the register in your checkbook, and you don't want to go over that bottom number when you calculate your checkbook register. Same way with the tip. About a year and a half ago, I would say, we had a reconciliation meeting of the local jurisdictions to go through the tip and see what money was available, where it should be spent. At that time, we thought were told that we had $4.5 million more money than we thought we had. And we planned it and decided where it should go, that type of thing. Then we're told, whoops, there was a mistake on the tip. We don't have that $4.5 million. That's really hard for local governments to adjust to. In this reconciliation meeting, the city found out that a project that had been on the tip for probably about the last 4 years actually is no longer funded and had been moved off about 4 years ago. There's $1.9 million that just sort of, these things happen, and we do move money around, but we have to have a spreadsheet that allows us to keep track of it all. Because they're really large numbers, they're really complicated numbers, and when there's a mistake, it's often a mistake that's going to definitely determine the progress that a local jurisdiction is making. So I'm just going to urge the board to consider that we need to take the time and perhaps the financial commitment to get a good spreadsheet available to PPACG, and then keep it up on a regular basis, keep it consistent with CDOT totals so that we always know how much money we have to spend. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, that kind of hit on a couple of the points that I was kind of uneasy about before. We're essentially, I like the checkbook analogy because we're essentially writing a check off of next year's pension payment.
4 years, and the year after, and the year after.
Because we didn't really spend everything that we had budgeted in the other one. I mean, I get the cash flow management, it just leaves me very, very uneasy. And that's sort of thing where, we're going ahead and spending the money because we have this in the tip. And then, oh, by the way, that project disappeared, so the money actually doesn't show up. And that's what leaves me very uneasy about the whole process. And I really, really would like to see a clearer, more stable tip process, but realize the constraints under which we all operate. But that's kind of my uncomfortable feeling at this point.
Well said. Any other questions for Craig? Is the board inclined to move on this item?
Chair, I move to adopt a resolution by the Pikes Peak Council of Governments approving Amendment 1 to FY 2016 and 2019 TIP for the Colorado Springs urbanizing area.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. It passes.
Very much.
Thank you, Craig. So item 6B is the Regional Non-Motorized Transportation System Plan. Hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Lindsay with the Transportation Planning Program. Let's see. I just have a couple slides to walk you guys through this since it's been a 2-year process, which is pretty hard to believe. All right. So I am here on the final leg here on the Regional Non-Motorized Transportation System Plan. This is a project that started 2 years ago, almost to the very day. And here we are with a final draft plan. And again, this is the regional plan, so it encapsulates the whole MPO area. But it was done in a joint effort with the City of Woodland Park, El Paso County, and the City of Colorado Springs, who are developing their own sub-area, kind of smaller local level plans that identify a little bit more specific improvements. And again, this is just for the MPO area. This process has been a really amazing robust stakeholder engagement process. We've had two series of meetings all throughout the region to get public input, in addition to our online interactive website. We've worked with the stakeholder and technical task force throughout the whole development of the project, in addition to closely working with the project management team, which is a subset of that technical task force. We've been coming through the CAC, the TAC, and the board, obviously, incrementally throughout that process, and even to local committees like the Active Transportation Advisory Committee for any of those city-specific issues. So about 2 years ago, we conducted an existing conditions audit and found that there are a lot of really good small pockets that are conducive to non-motorized transportation in our region, but usually they're kind of cut off, whether it's by I-25 or a creek bed. It just makes it really hard for non-motorized travelers to kind of get out of those pockets. We've also observed that the culture and weather for cycling and walking in our region is fantastic, so we have a lot to build off of there. There are a lot of great examples of off-road trails, like the Front Range Trail, Pikes Peak Greenway. But there's generally a disconnect between those trails and that on-street system. So you might be in a bike lane, a couple hundred feet away from a trail, but you have absolutely no idea that it's just a little bit over there and it might be a little bit safer and get you where you're going. And this kind of alludes to that lack of regional wayfinding for non-motorized travelers. And then anyone that's ever been on a bike or walking around the region, you'll notice there's a big difficulty getting from east to west across the region. There are a lot of those motorized barriers that run north-south that kind of prohibit that travel. And sidewalk quality totally varies, even presence varies throughout the region, whether it's along a transit line or in a downtown area. There's not really any standard. And so we heard a lot of these concerns echoed from stakeholders, and they really wanted us to focus on connectivity and standardizing infrastructure across the region. Wayfinding was something that we talked about a lot. It was that disconnect between on and off-road system, and it's not necessarily that the facility isn't there, but if there's no signage, people don't know about it. So we started off with those around 70 corridors, and these are kind of amorphous, long, short, half-mile wide, non-motorized corridors that we did some analysis on, and we were able to prioritize down to those 11 that we wanted to focus on. And for those, we developed individual alignments and a little bit more specificity for potential proposed improvements. And again, these aren't projects. These are kind of guiding alignments that we hope to see projects on in the future. These are the big areas that we could connect to create kind of the starting point for a connected non-motorized network. And again, like I said, it's been a 2-year process, so we've developed a lot of reports and materials for the public and for local entities and even statewide partners to check out and look at on our website. And those include an existing conditions report, corridor reports, peer city reviews, and a design standard toolkit, in addition to a wayfinding report and an economic impact report that looks at cycling in our region. And so the public comment period that occurred in April, we held 2 public meetings. We got over 50 attendees. We went around to 6 local boards and committees to present and get some feedback. And we collected over 100 comments. You can see in attachment 1. I went through and responded to every single one. And you can see how we incorporated them or didn't incorporate them. We thought it was really important, since we had such a good group of people engaged throughout that process, that we get back to everybody and really make it the best plan that we can be. So we were really responsive and engaged with all of our stakeholders throughout that process, and I hope you see kind of a culminating effort in this final draft plan. So the TAC, the CAC, and staff have all seen this and recommend it. And so I can take questions or comments.
Well, congratulations on
Thank you.
a long process and what looks to be a really well-done involvement with the stakeholders and the public. You read these public comments, and they're really engaged people. And it's not just, hey, I want a trail near my house. It's more, really detailed and good input.
Yeah.
And I was expecting to have a dozen or so people in their snappy bike outfits down here to speak, but I'm thinking now maybe that's the reason they're not here, is because they've had such an opportunity throughout this process. So Does anybody have any questions for Emily or thoughts, comments, motions?
Move approval?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Thank
Thank
you.
It's going to turn into a long-range plan chapter.
All right, our last action item is item C. It's the fiscal year 2017-22 TIP program funding levels.
Good morning again. Yep, it's, and as I alluded to in the TIP amendment number 1, we have some numbers changes. I'm passing around a hard copy of it. The top line, the Transportation Alternatives Program, those numbers for this that went out to you came from the control totals of the plan. Those numbers have changed, as have the STP Metro. The bottom line CMAQ numbers have changed, but they changed for a different reason. They changed because what you show, what was in the memo is the federal plus local, and it's actually only 80, so if you multiply those out, you see those are 87.21% of the top number. So these are the new numbers that we're looking at approving for the 2017 to 2022 TIP, which we are starting now also, because we are in the unfortunate spot. We've had the convergence of the UPWP, the 2040 plan, and the 16 to 19 TIP. And now we're going to start the 17 TIP, and about November, we're going to start the 2045 plan. So we just got squeezed, and not to, I guess, as an excuse, but we have one staff vacancy and another staff member who's been here 7 weeks, and he's still getting up to speed. So I'll talk a little bit more about that with the long-range plan. But so the numbers you see on the screen and in the handout are the federal funding levels for each of these years that we are looking for approval on. And these are the same numbers that the TAC saw. So these are what the TAC recommended in their motion.
And the CAC. CAC also looks like has made a recommendation for approval.
Yep, they did. And the CMAQ, I'll just hit on the CMAQ real quick. You don't see any CMAQ funding in 2020, 2021, or 2022. As stated in the memo, we will be fully in attainment of federal air quality standards. And per a recent conversation with Rich, depending on what the EPA does with the new ozone standards, we could actually be in attainment of the ozone standards also. So we won't call for projects in that category, not wanting to undo projects. If we do in fact violate or those funds available for us, sometime between now and 2020, before that year, we will do a call at that point and fund projects in those categories. But we'd prefer not to have projects listed in our TIP that we really aren't confident there's funds going to be available for. So
we're a victim of our own success.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Andy, please.
Just a loaded comment, since I also sit on the Utilities Board. Our air quality is meeting standards. So, yes, I just wanted to emphasize that point for a whole lot of people who keep showing up there and saying we're, polluting the air. But we meet the standards, and I think that's a significant point to stress.
And the CMAQ funding is for carbon monoxide, and we are so in attainment of that. We're at like a quarter of the standard now. So,
good. It's good news. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Please.
Can you explain what would happen if we can't use the cash management principles?
We will make sure every project is fully funded in the first year, and just move projects, just daisy chain them back until we run out of money. Yep.
What are the chances that will occur?
I'm optimistic. I think CDOT, it's going to be hard on them, especially at the start, but I think we will get to cash management, maybe not this year, but I think by 17, I think we will get there. But like I said, it does put the burden on CDOT staff, not on us.
Andy, did you?
Oh, just an editorial comment again, going back on the cash management. I mean, I just cringe because our uniformed brethren in here will, I'm sure, not. But when I was in uniform, if I ever did that with a federal program, never mind.
Okay. Any questions for Craig? Comments? Motions?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Thank you, Craig. Good work today. And finally, we have Section 7, our information items, so fiscal year 16-17 Unified Planning Work Program.
The work program, the purpose of the UPWP is to make sure that all the transportation planning that happens in the region is coordinated, so that people aren't planning for the same roads for different purposes. You're not running an arterial into a local street. That's how the process started. It now is also the de facto work program for PPACG's Transportation Department. We have put circulated the draft to the TAC and gotten a couple comments. Two changes that we've gotten back that you will see from the current UPW draft, UPWP. The next one is the Shooks Run study has expanded from being more of a water quality to including transportation. So that is being added in as one of the projects going on. And US 24 East, although it's not funded with our money this year, it is funded with Central Front Range money, so we're including that in as a transportation planning project also. Other than that, it's fiscal constrained, it's PPACG's work program. Like I said before, what you're going to see primarily, we're going to do the 17 to 22 tip. We're going to start the 2045 long-range plan. The first steps of that are updating our travel demand model, doing traffic counts around the region, data collection for the next go-round, including data collection for MAP 21 has some new requirements where we have to report how effective our projects are. So that's what you'll see in 2016 and 2017 is a lot of data collection and technical tool updates, and then the 1722 tip.
Shouldn't the revised handwritten table be carried over into this?
It will be, yep.
It will be. Okay.
And we have new planning totals, and I have to actually multiply the totals we have in it by .8721 because we had the federal and local in there. So, but yeah,
Good.
They will also carry into that.
Any questions for Craig? Comments?
And you'll see this next month as an action item.
And then finally, we have the draft 2040 Moving Forward Regional Transportation Plan Schedule.
And as Bob, the CAC chair, told you, we have rolled that back 2 months. We just had too big of a crunch, too many things going on, and we weren't doing justice. We have a great plan. The new format is excellent, and we're just not getting everything. We're just hung up getting it all into the format that is worthy of their review. We had too many notes. This needs to be changed. And we thank the TAC for their willingness to give us that approval. That really helped us out on that. But it just, with the staff, realistically, we want to roll out a quality plan, both the advisory committees and to the board. You can find 7 chapters online now to review at the web link. 3 more chapters are just this close. So they'll be up shortly, and then the other final 5 will be following on in the next week or 4. So, but we're still, our plan adoption is in November. It meets all the federal requirements. If we got to January, things would be getting a little tight. We will not get to January. So
you would encourage everybody on the board to start
reading
into these, reading these chapters now, so you're not trying to dedicate a week's worth of your time in November.
The 3 that are in now are actually the more interesting chapters: the financial plan, the project implementation plan, and I forget what the other one is. But they're good chapters.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, Rob?
Yeah, I think just a quick comment. I think having it cleaned up and looking as good as it does, I think maybe we're just trying for another national award for this plan. Not a temporary looking plan, but a really nice polished one. And again, on a serious note, the board, you've seen like the non-motorized plan you just approved. When you see it in the plan, you don't have to read it again because you read it for this meeting. So I think you're already one chapter ahead. And some of the project lists, they're the same project list. So when we say there's 800 pages and 15 chapters coming your way, be surprise text. I think you've seen them in board memos. Now you're going to see it in a polished format that meets all the other criteria.
And an advantage of the November approval time is in time for holiday gift giving, so you can give a copy of that to people you really care about.
For all the insomniacs in your life, huh? Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations again. I'm just really digesting the fact that we won this national MPO award. I mean, that's pretty heady stuff. It's really impressive.
We're hoping the award ceremony's in Hawaii.
Yeah. I think Newark, I heard.
Downtown.
Newark, Hawaii. Actually, on one of the bridges.
All right, so finally, we have any member entity announcements? Please.
Question, actually. Rod, what can you tell us about what's happening troop strength, specifically at Fort
It
Worth?
came out in USA Today. It was somewhat of a general announcement yesterday, saying that the Army's going to reduce its strength further in the next 2 years by 40,000 soldiers. And that's like the maximum amount of active duty soldiers that you could have. So to put some perspective to it, about 2 years ago in 2013, when sequestration about this time of the year was hitting, we weren't going to get that legislation extended. The Army had peaked out at about 570,000 soldiers being allowed on active duty. We've already implemented one announcement, which is pushing us down to 490 soldiers. This next announcement that was just made yesterday will take it down to a total of 450,000 active duty soldiers. There's already been a lot of planning going on. This wasn't done as quickly as when the sequestration actually hit with very short notice. So the effects to Fort Carson are not fully known. They didn't announce what units or what installations would see effects, other than two. One up in Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska. There's a single brigade combat team up there, and then at Fort Stewart there was a single brigade combat team, and those two seem to be mentioned as two installations that would see an effect of this latest reduction. General Gonzalez, I was in another meeting with him yesterday. Nobody was jumping off any cliff at Fort Carson. We feel that we've already kind of anticipated this announcement. The only other thing is within the realms of the Army, they're still talking about, okay, this is an announcement that's been made, but there still would be continued cuts possibly in the future as we continue to withdraw forces. And a lot will depend on the election and how things change at the national level with the next presidential election. So I can say that's what I know, and that's probably all that anybody knows right now. The announcement was just
Mr. Baker, did you?
I'm wondering if there were civilian cuts.
Yeah,
17,000
17,000
were also mentioned. I can tell you, we've already been planning an FY16, which starts in October for the military, and an FY17 reduction. Fort Carson is already at its, if we take cuts, we've already met our FY16 just by holding back some recruitments, so there's not a significant impact. The 17 cuts are, we're going to have the discussion, what are we going to stop doing to see those cuts, and those are just preliminary numbers, very small. We're dealing with less than 5% of the total force.
Thank you. Councilman, did you have a question, or was that your question?
No, that's
was
17,000 civilians. I was trying to pinpoint from folks exactly where the 17,000 civilian positions were going to be cut, and I couldn't get any granularity on the process, so yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other announcements, thoughts,
Do
please?
you know if that includes contractors or all GS?
That does not include contractors, but that's more of a budgeting item than an authorization level like
Okay.
active duty soldiers or Department of the Army civilians. So that's really going to be related to the available dollars. And I think the key thing that the Army is going to be dealing with, and I know Air Force is also looking at the same thing, is you can't just keep taking cuts in dollars and not address what services, what programs have to be looked at. And so a lot is being looked at now, particularly since we've had so many, and I would call them social service
We need to thank
put in
Putin
place because of the prolonged
System and process.
efforts that we had soldiers deployed. So we're looking at those to see how we can effectively still meet the needs of soldiers and families, but reduce those program costs.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? I'm trying here rapidly to look what the second Wednesday in August is.
13?
13th. So if there's no other announcements, then see you all on the lucky 13th, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Friday the 13th.
12, sorry.
Wednesday in August.
12, thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted lucky 13.
Should know how to do this, but there we go. All right.
It's actually on the calendar right in front of us. The last page.
Oh, right. I'm on the first page.
She said 94, right? If you don't use the gavel, I just don't.
Oh, all right.
coming from the Pentagon and accepted. What were you doing next? J5.
For Sally, 2 years there. Washington a lot, huh? This is good. When does she actually ascend to the chair?
Spent
Oh, boy.
a lot of time at the White House.
Get into it up there about the first two, but of course weather hasn't.
We'll be out there.
Anyway.
Support your colleagues.
See 10 feet ahead.
Joke around the county is,
Yeah, there's been a lot of going around.
and when she
You work with Chris
Yeah.
Crawford.
All right, Neil, take care of yourself.
Okay.
$12 million
Regular game day.
And I think,
Too much work with Troy Endicott?
you know, we soldier on.
What's that?
A small community.
Yeah. Well, Scott Bromberger was J3 county. I think he's just with the civil.